بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. Since yesterday was the anniversary of the birth of the Holy Prophet and Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq, so I take this opportunity and offer my congratulations to everyone. I know the situation, the circumstance is very painful and reminds us of what's happening both in Palestine and in Lebanon, but yet we offer our congratulations anyway. In the list of prophets that we have covered, descendant of Prophet Ibrahim, we talked about Ismail and Ishaq last week, and now two other prophets which are related somehow directly with Prophet Ibrahim, particularly from the Ishaq's part, and that is Prophet Yaqub and Prophet Yousif, Jacob and Joseph. The name of Yaqub primarily as a prophet has been mentioned 16 times, although 2 extra times has been referred to him as Israel, which is a nickname for Prophet Yaqub. Most of the story of Prophet Yaqub falls within the surah, the 12th surah of Quran, Surah Yousif, that the story of Yousif, his relationship with his brothers and with his father has been told. We say something about it in a few minutes. Prophet Yaqub repeatedly in a number of verses in Surah An'am, Maryam, Ankabut, Anbiya and Hud are mentioned when in the context of when the Malaika and the angels came to go and punish Qawm Lut, and there was a debate between them and Prophet Ibrahim. Prophet Ibrahim tried to intervene and say that, look, don't punish this, give them a little bit more time. And the Malaika said, no, the ample time has been given to them. He said, okay, if you're going to punish them, then what is going to happen to Lut, Prophet Lut, which is his nephew and his family? They said that they will be protected, and at that particular moment Sarah, the wife of Prophet Ibrahim, was there, and she some kind of, according to the verse, smiled, or she became light-hearted that at least the wife of Lut and the family would be protected. The Malaika gave her the glad tidings that you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is going to grant you a son, and after that your grandson. وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ وَبَشَّرْنَاهَا, this time directly with Sarah, وَبَشَّرْنَاهَا بِإِسْحَاقَ وَيَعْقُوبَ بِإِسْحَاقَ وَمِنْ وَرَاءِ إِسْحَاقِ يَعْقُوبَ. So this is in Surah Hud. So these names, primarily when it comes to name of Prophet Yaqub, his name is presented in the context of the name of ancient prophets of Hebrews that stayed in the company of the elect, and they were granted the prophethood, both in various surahs. Quran beyond this does not say anything about how did he grow up, whether Prophet Ishaq had 2 children, 2 boys or 1. According to the literature, particularly the Hebrew literature and what we call Israelite, the Prophet Ishaq had 2 children, and they were tombs, Isu, Ya Isa, with a Sad rather than Sin, as well as Yaqub, and there was always a conflict between these 2 children. None of these exist, at least in the text of the Quran. However, some ahadith, historical narrators, have included within the history some issues, but we don't see them as trustworthy because the source is questionable and should be debated. And they certainly, when they go to the life of and ask the Imams about the life of Prophet Yaqub or his children, he doesn't give any of these what happened to Prophet Yaqub's birth, etc., etc. But yet there is a huge amount of literature exists in our books, in our historical books. His birth, again, was foretold by Surah Ibrahim, Surah Maryam, as وَبَشَّرْنَاهَا بِإِسْحَاقَ وَوَهَبْنَا لَهُ إِسْحَاقَ, both of them. If we were to, for the sake of discussing this and not going into in depth into Israeliyat, sidestep the issue of birth, sibling, and anything else, and how he grew, where he grew up. The main story of Yaqub is condensed and unpacked in the story of Yousif, his son. According to Mufassirin and the commentators, Yaqub had 12 children, 12 boys. And these 12 boys are technically the head of the 12 tribes of Bani Israel. And this is something that we we discuss it when it comes to the tafsir al-Quran, but they were the 12 head, became the 12 head of the Bani Israel. How many wives Prophet Yaqub had, whether they were sisters within the wives or anything else, there are some debates that it's been rejected from Ahlul Bayt, but yet in the historical books, it's claimed that Yaqub was told by Ishaq to go and marry his cousins, which is, they lived in Hilla or somewhere in Babel. So he had to travel over there and stayed over there. And when he got to his uncle, a deal was made, which, by the way, is similar to the deal that later on Musa makes with Prophet Shu'aib. That if you want any of my daughter, then you can have their hand, but you have to promise that you are going to work for me certain number of years. So Yaqub promises his uncle in Hilla or wherever they were area, that he's going to work for 7 years for the sake of the marriage. When finally 7 years is over, his uncle tells him that he wanted the second daughter, but which was prettier according to the historians. But his uncle came to him and said, look, we are tribal institutions, and within the tribe we are not going to allow the marriage of the second daughter if the first daughter is still at home. So you have to marry the first daughter. And if you want to marry the second sister, her sister, you need to work extra 7 years. So he had to work extra 7 years to get the second one. Now this has caused a huge amount of debate. That how come a prophet marries two sisters at the same time? This is something that in the books of history debated, but we don't see it in our literature from Ahlul Bayt. Out of these wives and the slave that they had, and they were released, etc., the 12 sons are born, and conflict develops between these 12 children, particularly the last two, which is Yousif and Benjamin, which are from one mother, and the other 10 which are from other mothers. The issue is that the love and affection that Yaqub has for the last two of his children, which is Joseph or Yousif and Benjamin. The story of Yaqub and his relationship with the children has become in the what we call how parents should or should not deal with their children in their upbringing, and to be mindful of you not to make their love for and affection for the children to be extremely open and clear, that causes resentment between the children. To that has become one of those stories in the child or children's development stories. But leaving that aside, the conflict between and Yaqub to protect Yousif and Benjamin from he knew about the dislike of the other children from Yousif. He became overprotective, not allow Yousif to be taken out and play with other children. The older children, they decide, they sit some kind of conference or discussion between themselves. We have our father loving Yousif more than the rest of us, and to exclusively get that love for us, we have to get rid of Yousif. The debate is whether they should kill him or whether they should exile him. Finally, they reach the point that exiling him will be much better rather than killing him. And to do that, they develop a plan that first we would ask our father to allow him to come out with us according to the Quran. They go to their father and they say, why don't you allow Yousif to come out to play? We are going to the countryside, because they were all shepherds. And Yaqub says that I'm afraid that if he comes out with you, you are going to be wandering around and a wolf will come and eat him. Even if they did not want to create this issue of blood eaten by wolf or anything, inadvertently Yaqub give them an excuse for them to come back later on that night and say, well, as you said, the wolf ate him. They said, no, we are 10 strong brothers and we will be able to protect him. Anyway, Yaqub allows this to happen and Yousif is taken out. Since they had already agreed the plan, he is dropped in a well in the area. And at night they went back with taking his overall or some of his clothes and getting a sheep killed and slaughtered and dipping it in that blood and taking that items of clothing to Prophet Yaqub and saying that, "O Father, unfortunately, as we went out to play, a wolf came and ate Yousif. And if you don't believe us, this is the clothing, blooded clothing." The story is unpacked that Yaqub says, I'm going to complain to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I believe this is some plan that you concocted, but I will ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and inshallah God would protect him. But then next day they went to the well, kept an eye on it until a caravan comes by on the path to Egypt, and it was a well for water, so they sent somebody to draw water from the well. Yousif finds the opportunity and grabs to the bucket, and they took him out. These people immediately, the brothers come in and they say, "Oh, we were searching for him. This is one of our slaves who had run away. Since he has become disobedient, we want to sell him." فَشَرَوْهُ, as the Quran says, بِثَمَنٍ بَخْسٍ. They sold him for few pieces of silver. They sold their brother for few pieces of silver. The caravan takes Yousif to Egypt and sells him in an open market to the chief minister of Pharaoh, who didn't have any children. And chief minister, after purchasing this child, goes to his wife and says, "Look after this child. In case, hopefully when he grows older, we can either consider him as a son or some reliable member of the family. Unfortunately, as Yousif got older and more beautiful, handsome, and so on, the wife of this chief minister, Zulaykha, becomes attracted to this young man. And the whole story of attraction of Zulaykha to Yousif unpacks itself in Surah Yousif. That ultimately, no matter how many times she tries indirectly to point out to Yousif, Yousif rejects the advances, and finally she closes the doors and tries to corner him. He runs away. At the time, as he wants to go out of the door, Zulaykha grabs the back of his neck, and the struggle, his items of clothing, shirt, whatever it is torn. At the moment that he tries to go out, the chief minister, the husband, walks in. Then Zulaykha immediately jumps and says, look, after what we have done for this young man, look, he's now trying to be disrespectful to your wife and family. He deserves the maximum punishment. By the way, Iranians have made a film about the life of Prophet Yousif, and it's extremely good film. Yousif rejects this and says, no, I did not. It was her who wanted me to fall for it. Now, two words against each other. At that particular moment, chief minister says, well, how can I trust your words if my wife says that you were the one who advanced? Yousif turns away to a young child, baby that was sitting in a crate, and said, you witness, because you were present. Everybody becomes kind of confused. You're expecting a child which is a year old that cannot speak properly to speak on behalf of you. Miraculously, the child starts walking and give kind of a paradigm. If the shirt was torn from the front, then he is lying and she is telling the truth. Because he was trying to struggle, she resisted it, she torn the shirt. But if the shirt is torn from the back, which means he was running away, and she was grabbing it, he is telling the truth and she is telling lies. So when the chief minister looks at the overall that Yousif was wearing, found out that it was torn from the back, realized with the shahada and witnessing of the child, the matter was resolved. And to protect himself and his reputation, tried to keep it hush-hush and told Yousif to forget about the story, and told his wife to go and be to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ask God for forgiveness, or to ask for forgiveness, and thinking that the matter is going to finish. However, the aristocracy, news gets through very quickly. Through the slaves and of the courtier, the news reached the women of the upper level aristocracy of the Egyptian society. And now it's an open news. They all began to criticize Zulaykha, who is one of these individuals, for what she has done. She organized a meeting that invited these women of upper aristocracy to come to the meeting for, say, call it a brunch, and gave each one a plate of fruits and a knife, and then told Yousif to come out in front of them. So he comes out, and they are so mesmerized by his beauty and handsomeness that they begin cutting their hand without noticing exactly what was happening. Zulaykha comes back. They say, this is not a human being, this is an angel. Zulaykha comes back and he says, this is the one that I have been trying to seduce, but he has resisted it. If he doesn't accept my proposal and my advances, I will make sure that he goes to prison. This area of the whole verses in the Holy Quran regarding the conflict between him, Zulaykha, and whether he was trying to kill him. Lola an ra'a burhan rabba. Exactly what does that mean is something that you can look at the commentators of the Holy Quran. According to the Quran, Yousif says that, O Lord, as-sijnu ahabbu ilay. I would rather go to prison rather than to stay among these, as we say, creepy crawlies. So they decided to send him to prison, and everything was quiet because now the source of the problem is removed. The story continues in the Quran. Still, Yaqub is not in the picture. Yaqub, after the first dropping of Yousif in the well, and his going back to Allah, asking for forgiveness, except for patience, his name is not there until later. Yousif is sent to prison. 2 inmates come to him, seeing him that of holy character, and they tell him that each one of us has a dream. Can you interpret these dreams for us? By the way, Quran, when it comes to the issue of dream, both Yaqub and Yousif, let's go back to the beginning of the story. Surah Yousif, when we open it, immediately starts with the dream that Yousif had and goes to his father. إني رأيت أحد عشر كوكبا والشمس والقمر لي ساجدين. That I saw the 11 stars as well as the sun and the moon prostrating in front of me. Because Prophet Yaqub knew the outcome of this dream, told him not to mention anything to his brothers, because otherwise they will be infuriated. So now we are going to how this dream, his dream, Yousif's dream, will be realized later on. But these 2 inmates come to him and they say, we find you of a good character and we have 2 dreams. Can you interpret these dreams for us? One of them says, Inni ra'aytu a'suru khamra, that I saw myself standing and feeding my master alcohol or wine. And the other one said, Inni ra'aytu ahmalu khubzan, I saw that I was carrying bread over my head and birds were eating from it, from the bread that I had over my head. He takes the opportunity to speak about his family, his background, how they worship only one God, and he has already left people, his family behind, that they acted in an immoral manner. And after taking some time, he comes up, he delivers the response to the 2 dreams. He tells the person that saw giving wine to the master that you are going to be released from the prison and be brought closer, and you become very close associate of your master, where you will be in charge of the winery, etc., etc. The other one who said that I had a dream which bread and birds were eating from the bread over my head, Yousif told him that you will be hanged and birds will come to eat from your head, because you will be left outside for so long that the birds, whether it is wild, whatever, they're going to eat from your head. Then something happened here. Then he turns his face to the one that he thought is going to be released from the prison and go back to his master, which I believe, when we look at the commentaries about this, his master must have been the Pharaoh himself. Because later on, when the Pharaoh has a dream, and nobody from those who interpret the dream within the courtiers they are able to respond to it. This person being present comes to the rescue. So he tells this person, when you get back to your Lord, tell him about how unjustly I've been left in prison for no fault of myself, and see whether my release can be secured. For this reason, Quran says that he was left in prison for a number of years, until Urafa used the story of Yaqub and Yousif and focus on two episodes within, or two sections within this. The attachment of Yaqub to Yousif rather than the attachment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the what we call tarkul awla from Yousif, in a sense that he asked another human being for his release rather than asking Allah. And both of them had to go through huge amount of trial and painful experiences to remember. In the story of Yaqub, the film that Iranians have made it, if you look at it, a figure comes in the form of a human being, but pretending to be Jibreel, and tells Yousif, so long as your attachment to Yousif is there, you are not going to see Yousif. It's only when you let go of that attachment and you turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that things would begin to change. That strikes Yaqub immediately, that all the time I have been searching for Yousif in a wrong place. Rather than constantly thinking about my heart connecting to Yousif and how close to it, I should have right from the beginning gone a different path and really focus on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and attachment to Allah. Urafa, they spent a huge amount of time on the concept of attachment and detachment here. And the same thing goes for Prophet Yousif, where he asks somebody else, a human being, to intervene for his release rather than ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, they spent a huge amount of time on this. There are other stories later on that we see in various prophets that we discuss. But after this, he stays for a number of years. Adad as-sinin, the Quran doesn't specify it. Number of years. Until again another dream comes in. This time the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh sees a dream that 7 fat cows are being eaten by 7 lean cows. And 7 ears of wheat are being taken over and 7 dry ones. Since most of these pharaohs and royalties, they have their own dream interpreters of the court, he calls for the dream interpreters to come in and tells them of his dream. They say adghathu ahlam. Adghathu ahlam means that these are disturbed dreams. So the dreams can be divided into disturbed dreams, which has no meaning whatsoever, and ordinary dreams that we could interpret. Because they could not understand, they said, well, it's disturbed dream, has no meaning. At that particular moment, now goes back to the person who left the prison, and the dream, his dream was interpreted by Yousif that he's going to be released. He just remembered and says, I have someone that could interpret the dream. We should go back to the prison and call for Yousif. He goes back to the prison and tells Yousif, Ayyuha Siddiq, or holy person, what is the interpretation of this dream? That you have, we have 7 fat cows being eaten by 7 lean ones, and 7 ears of dry and 7 green of wheat. How to resolve? What is the interpretation here? He says that you're going to have 7 years of lean in your crops, of very productive. So plant as much as possible within these 7 lean years, because you are going to have 7 years of absolute drought and dryness. And whatever you have saved will be eaten during these 7 years, apart from what you have reserved them in their original ears, which means you didn't split the wheats or anything else. So in your silos, whatever you want to use on a regular basis, take out, but keep everything else in the original shape, because you need them for future. The person goes back to the Pharaoh and tells him of this interpretation. Pharaoh says, bring him. Now when this person goes back to the prison, Yousif refuses to come out until he is completely exonerated. So he asks for a confrontation between him and the women of our upper aristocracy, as well as Zulaykha, to see what was his fault that he was in prison. And fortunately, all of them say that it was our fault. He didn't do anything wrong. We accused him, and he is as holy as he is. And even Zulaykha said that yes, it was Nafs al-Ammara that we talk about in the 3 various classification, comes in this story. وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ أَمَّارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ. So the story comes up. Then we have historians have talked about when he comes out, he becomes the chief minister in charge of what we call economic and the affairs of Egypt, and all the land and everything else that is planted and so on will be under his supervision. The name of Egypt, or that area of land, immediately during the 7 years of drought spreads around as a source that people can migrate to, or at least go to get some help. The news get to where? To Palestine. Now the story of Yaqub comes back into the whole thing. Yaqub tells his children, since there is something, he doesn't know that it is Yousif or anything else. By the way, later on when we discuss how he realizes that Yousif is alive, there is another component to the story of Yaqub that the Urafa they talk about. So the brothers come to Egypt and meet with this figure who is the chief minister. He recognizes who they are, but they don't. So they ask for support, that we have come from Palestine and we have an old father. He doesn't say anything. He gives them whatever they need, and he returns the money that they brought with them to buy with it, puts them back in their the camel loads that he's going to go back. But he makes it a condition. He makes a condition. In the meantime, he says, I believe you have an extra brother that back home. They said, yes, we have an extra brother that our father is very fond of. And he said, well, next time if you come, if you don't bring that brother, which is Binyamin, the younger brother of Yousif. Yousif and Binyamin being torn from the same mother. If you don't bring him, there is nothing for you in Egypt. So I'm not going to give you anything. They say we are going to argue his case or this case with his father and see whether if he responds. They go back. They tell the story to their father, and initially he refuses. Says, how can I trust you with his brother? And look what you did to the older brother, which was Yousif, many years ago. They opened the load that they had got on camels, and they found out the money and everything else that they wanted to pay for the wheat and everything else has been returned to them. So they tell the dad, look dad, we are not going to lose anything. We are going to get for every person a load of ba'ir, which means one huge load on a camel. Finally he rescinds and gives permission to them. They come in. He brings his brother Benjamin to him and quietly tells him that I'm your brother Yousif, and I want you to stay with me. And how the plan is, he's not going to talk about it. What he does, Yousif kind of organizes a plan. The plan is this golden kale that Quran says, which is a measuring cup, that with it you measure wheat and everything else. He hides the golden kale in Benjamin's camel. And once they are all packed, beginning to depart, somebody, أَذَّنَ مُؤَذِّنٌ, which means somebody said, يَا أَيَّتُهَا الْعِيرُ إِنَّكُمْ لَسَارِقُونَ. O people, the caravan, you are thieves. Said, what have you lost? Sawaq al-Malik, the golden measuring cup that belongs to the chief minister. They say, but we are not here to steal. Say, well, what is it if we find it out in your stuff? Technically, according to the old age custom, whoever had the siyah or this golden measuring cup in his stuff, then he has to be taken away. He has to become a slave. So they begin checking all other brothers until they come to Benjamin and takes it out from there. They say, well, Ya Ayyuhal Aziz, if he stole, his older brother stole in the past. Yousif keeps quiet. He says, well, he stays with us. As far as your accusation about the older brother, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows whether you are telling the truth. They have a conference. They go back to the parent, to Yaqub, and Yaqub begins crying even more. The two loved children that he is attached to, they are no longer there, but somehow deep down in his heart feels that these two children are still alive. So he sends his children back to go back to Egypt and search for them. This time when they come to Prophet Yousif, they say that we have come back with nothing. Tasaddaq alayna, give us some sadaqah, some help. This is the time when Prophet Yousif comes back to them, tells them, do you remember what you have done, what you did to your brother Yousif? They are struck by it. Anta Yousif? They ask a question. Are you Yousif? Are you Joseph? Ana Yousif wa hadha akhi. And this is my brother. They ask for forgiveness and everything else. He says, I will forgive you. Take my qamis, which is my shirt. Now there is a huge debate whether this shirt was the qamis that Prophet Ibrahim gave to Ishaq, and Ishaq gave to Yaqub, and Yaqub gave to Yousif, or some heavenly shirt or anything else. Take this to my dad, and he will gain his sight, and then bring all the family back. They depart to go to Yaqub and take the shirt to him. As the caravan is coming through Sinai's desert, Yaqub smells the smell of, or the scent of Yousif, and says that I smell Yousif. They said, you are still crank because Yousif is 18, 19 years ago. But as the person comes and throws this shirt on him and he gains his sight, he said, I told you that this is what is coming. Arafah focus on this particular part. Say, how comes? When the attachment was there to Yousif, Yousif was a mile from Yaqub's tent, and Yaqub couldn't recognize where he is. when he detached himself from the material life, from the love of Yousif, and connected himself from far away, the scent of Yousif from miles comes to him. The illumination that Allah wants him to do. Huge literature in here. So the family goes to Egypt, stay with Prophet Yousif for a while, and Prophet Yousif brings his mom, dad, and sits them on the seat of power, and the brothers all prostrate in front of him. And he says to his dad, Ya abata hada ta'bir al-ru'ya. And this is the result, the result of, or the dream that I had, and this how it's been there. Then Quran doesn't say much about whether Yousif married Zulaykha, whether Zulaykha was by then blind and poor, that Yousif, which you see it in the film, that miraculously he somehow turned her into a youthful Zulaykha again. These kind of things are in the story, and they are making it so that the film, but Quran is quiet. Quran also doesn't say anything about what happened to Yaqub after he came to Egypt. According to our ahadith, he stayed with Yousif and his children for 12 or 13 years, and then he died. His body was taken, according to his wasiyah, was taken back to Palestine and buried next to the site of Ishaq in the Ibrahim Mosque, which is Al-Khalil. Which later on, when the body of Yousif is transferred during the life of Prophet Musa, it's buried over there as well, close to it. This is the story of Yaqub and Yousif. Primarily, the life of Yaqub comes within the story of Yousif, although there are a number of verses we have regarding the glad tiding that we have. But if you go to Book of History, huge amount of literature. But Urafa, they focus on the life of Yaqub and Yousif and on various episodes of their life and what lessons we can get from them, particularly from attachment, detachment, and the knowledge of the holy prophets, the Ma'sumin and the prophets, the knowledge that they gain. Is it something that Allah grants them occasion by occasion, whenever He sees fit, or grants them on a general form, Ilm al-Anbiya or Ilm al-A'imma, on a general form, but it is limited or extensive based on the spiritual level that they are in. Musa goes to this Mount Sinai to worship, to elevate his spirituality. He doesn't know the Samiri story happened in between his tribe, the Bani Israelite, and others happen to understand differently. So I stop here, but primarily the story of Yaqub, beyond certain references to his glad tiding about his birth in various surahs, and in one surah, Al Imran, I believe, that says, كل الطعام كان حلا لبني إسرائيل إلا ما حرم إسرائيل على نفسه. That refers to the story of Israel, which is Yaqub, prohibited for himself the eating of camel meat, because somehow physiologically he would not, his body doesn't react. But because he did that, Bani Israel took it as some kind of a revelation or as a command. For a while they would not eat camel's meat as well. But these are stories that come later. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.